Hello, my friends. This is Heather. This is Back to Me and the amazing human that I'm talking to this week because this is episode number 98, the Celebrity Chat episode with Cortney Whitebay. And let me tell you, we were chatting away, and you're going to know when it happens. At one point, Cortney blew my mind. Brilliant. She's got a brilliant program, and I think just the way she's thinks and the way she has created ways to help people really be successful and be healthy and feel awesome. It's just so smart. Have a listen, and heck, let me know what you think. Take care, my friend. I'll see you again soon. Hi, my friends. Welcome. This is the Back to Me podcast, and this is Heather, and I am super excited that you're here. You are going to hear some tips and some tricks and some ideas to help you live your happiest and healthiest self. I call it Back to Me because when you are taking care of yourself, back to me, then you can take better care of others, and we can all make the world a better place. This is Wellness Your Way, and I am super happy that you're here. Oh my goodness, because life is life. Hello, my friend. This is Heather, and this is the Back to Me podcast. And it's the super amazing celebrity, awesome human day with Cortney Whitebay, another awesome human. Hooray! And we were laughing because we heard little kids yelling in the background. And I said, it's the real life podcast. And busy moms can have time to do podcasts and stay in shape. And that's what we decided.
All right.
Welcome, Cortney. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. People who listen to the podcast know that I love, I talk about all the aspects of wellness, but one near and dear to my heart is physical wellness because it can affect pretty much everything in your life if you feel like crap, really. Let's be serious. And I'm always curious of how did you get into this world of physical wellness? It's Hudson. I'm looking at your logo, Hudson Valley Peak Performance.
Mm-hmm. Well, originally I went to college and was pre-med and thought like, well, what am I going to do? Maybe I'll go become a doctor.
Sure.
I mean, like, why not?
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, anybody can do it. So, I mean, generally in the United States, they let you do that. Anyway, so I thought I might do that, but I was never 100% sold on that. And I went to a really big university on Long Island called Stony Brook University. And it was a huge pre-med school. Like, I think that there were more people from Asia than there were, Southeast Asia all over than there were from America.
It was the place to go.
Yeah. It was like huge. And like our professors and everybody, it was like super multicultural,
Wow.
Which was cool. Very competitive.
Yeah.
And, I loved a lot of my classmates, but I also kind of looked around me and I was like, I don't belong here. And I look back at that in terms of like Brene Brown's research, in terms of like fitting in and belonging, and just reflecting in that a little bit. It was just a sure sign that, not that I couldn't be there or whatever, I wasn't allowed to, I was totally allowed to, but like in my heart and my body, like I just didn't belong there. I loved the courses that I did, and I hated some of them. And I loved to hate some of them. One of them I took was like biochemistry, I think, or microbiology. No, I think it was biochemistry, and I failed it twice, but I just thought it was the most fascinating thing I'd ever taken.
You just kept taking it.
I was like, I'm going to take it again because like this time I'll pass it. Like, this is just so cool. And I thought it was really cool. It did not think I was as cool as I thought it was. So that was like a little bit of a bummer, but it didn't matter because I didn't really need it. And I finally took this exercise physiology class my last year, I think even my last semester of college, and everything fell into place. all of the chemistry, all of the biology, all of the math, all of the physics. Like, I was like, oh, this is why we had to do all of that. And this is how it all makes sense. And I feel
Oh,
like if I had taken that class first, I would have been able to work myself down to the nitty gritty cellular level and all those crazy chemistry reactions, because I would have had a context for them, you know?
right.
But I didn't. So I went to grad school for that because I was like, this is the best thing ever. I get to nerd out on the science in a way that I can actually not fail. I actually got straight A's my last year of graduate school. Like, I was like, I worked so hard. I had 26-hour long headaches. Actually, they were probably like 48-hour long headaches, but I did it.
Right.
And I loved it. And unfortunately, that led me to healthcare. And
Unfortunately.
I say unfortunately, learning wise, it was wonderful. But unfortunately, here in the United States, at the very least, it's of my experience, it was a very toxic work environment for one. I was very limited in terms of using my expertise that I loved and spent so many hours working on, and all of
Right.
that, the really intense headaches, which I have since learned how to not get. Um, and I wasn't using my full range of skills. I was using maybe less than 25% of them. And I just felt like I was going really, really stagnant. And then the combination of feeling bored and stagnant and frustrated, and my role at the time was cardiac and pulmonary stress testing. And what I would do is I would take people, you know, whoever was on my schedule or whoever randomly got pulled out of the waiting room thinking they were getting lab results today. And and they would be waiting there for 2 hours, and then the doctor would be like, oh, hey, go get a stress test. And they'd be like, okay. And then I'd have them hop on one of these like bikes like this over here
Yeah.
with a full mask on, and I'd be like, okay, we're gonna just pedal until you just absolutely feel like you cannot do it anymore. And if you know what that feels like, your legs are burning, your lungs are burning, you feel like you can't breathe. And for somebody who just gets pulled out of the waiting room and has no idea that they're going to be doing this kind of a thing, it's a panic attack, you know, for sure. Like, it's scary. It's scary if you don't know that you're going to be doing that and you're not prepped for how it's going to feel in your
Right.
body. Because we need you to go as hard as you can, as long as you can, to get the data, right? And it keeps you safe, and it's totally necessary, I think, and it's a beautiful thing. But the environment that I was in doing it was not good. And when I had my first baby, it was also completely unaffordable. I
Oh,
was going to
right.
lose money every single month if I stayed working. I was going to
Wow.
actually have to pay to work. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, I
Literally have their life in my hands. The whole point is to push you as hard as you can to see if you're going to have a heart attack
let's
or
just
some other
see.
cardiac event. And then when I start to see you having a heart attack, that's when I'm like, okay, we're going to stop now, and I'll call the doctor and he'll come talk to you about your test.
Oh, Lord. So I could see that'd be so boring because you know so much and you would have all these skills to help people and all you're doing is seeing if you can have them have a heart attack.
Basically, I mean, that's like, you know, the nuts and bolts of it. And it's not to say there was, you know, there was so much nuance to learn in terms of working with people. And that
Right.
part was very difficult. And it was, I didn't know it at the time, but it was the universe teaching me emotional intelligence in a really rough way, a really intense manner. And I am so very grateful for that, because not only did I have to navigate the various physicians whose offices I was contracted into and their terrible behavior and their noxious comments and their expectation that I was going to work 2-3 hours past the time I was supposed to, and you know, them shutting the door and standing in front of it and saying, oh, do you know how much I pay to have you here? Because I told them I had to leave on time that day. You know,
Oh
like,
my
I was like,
gosh.
this is harassment.
Yeah, no
this is
kidding.
this is not where we want to be. So I had to leave. I had no choice, you know, other than my mental health. My mental health was suffering. My husband was like, you got to quit this job. And I was like, no, this is my first job.
Oh my gosh.
First real
You
job.
can have so many jobs in a lifetime, but you
Oh
do
yeah.
get kind of attached to that first
I
one,
was in my
right?
young 20s, you know, like, I'm not gonna quit because the man tells me to.
Right.
Probably
He
should have
wasn't
done
telling
it
you. He
earlier.
was just suggesting helpfully.
Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, he saw how miserable I was. He saw how miserable, like, I didn't come home a single day without complaining about some atrocity or another,
Oh my gosh.
and that's not a good place to be mentally. And that's definitely something that I work on for myself. Like, complaining is not something that it's not something that I'm okay with doing anymore. And it's not something I'm okay with my kids doing. And, like, if I start to complain or I start to hear them complain, I'm like, nope, we're not doing this. And now, can you express frustration and concern and all? Of course, 100%. And we have to, right?
Yeah.
But actual complaint, like, and consistently puts you in a place where it's really hard to get out of again. So I have tried really hard. That's another, I guess, learning lesson from that experience, that it's a very clear example.
Right.
Complaining just gets you further into the mess. It doesn't help you get out of that hole.
Yeah, it might help. You might, sometimes I call it ventilating. You might, be releasing some physical frustration, but it doesn't solve the problem,
Mm-mm.
right?
Yeah, and there is Jay Shetty has, I don't know if you're familiar with Jay Shetty. Was a former monk, and he's got a great book. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head right now, but he has a section about this, and there's actually research now on it. And I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it was an aha moment for me. And I was like, okay, complaining like just has to be over, full stop. And there was something of like that venting release too. But I think it was called something slightly different, like it may be venting, but like somehow it wasn't complaining, if that
Right.
makes sense. I'd have
It's
to look
like,
up the passage.
yeah, that's okay. I was trying to remember who he was. I actually just looked him up. Think Like a
Yeah.
Monk? Because I know there was a monk who wrote
Yeah, I think
The Monk Who
so.
Sold His Ferrari, but this is a different one.
Yeah,
This is a
no,
different one.
yeah, this guy is like, just from like a normal, I think he might have been in finance before. He was like, nah, I'm gonna go be a monk.
Be a
And then
monk. Hey,
I
well,
think he almost actually died with the,
I was in finance and I went and became a yogi, so I'm
yeah,
I'm
there
on
you
board with
go.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm on
yeah.
board with that. So then
Yeah.
did you go from that straight into your private practice?
Almost, not almost. So we were down in Virginia, the Washington D.C. metro area, and then we moved back to where I'm from in mid-state New York. So I quit, and then there was a couple months I had just had the baby, and then we lived in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania for a while, which is historically really fascinating.
Yeah. Everybody knows where that is.
You could always look it up. It's like a Revolutionary War thing. They do like all sorts of like war reenactments and stuff, and they dress up in the wool and they go and with
That's
bayonets. And
awesome.
yeah, it's a thing. Anyway, it's like rural Pennsylvania. Like it's there's not much else there, but but we lived there for a little while, and then we moved back home for me
Right.
to be closer to our family. And then, we weren't here 2-3 months before I was like, I'm going to go absolutely insane. And I was like, I have to do something rather than just be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want to work 40 hours a week and have somebody else raise my kid. And I can't afford to anyway, because
Right.
an exercise physiologist does not get paid enough to cover childcare in most cases. So, which is unfortunate, but because it's such a necessary position to have, especially in healthcare, but it's not really looked at as such, which is a
Right.
shame. In other countries, very similar positions are taken like very seriously. So I see that and with other friends, and I'm like, oh, that's really nice that you guys do that for each other over there. Just too bad we don't do that for ourselves here. But yeah, I like being a mostly stay-at-home mom. I don't like being a full-time stay-at-home mom. And so I started my own business, and I was like, I
Well,
can't.
and you wanted to still use all of that
Mhm.
work that you had put in, right? And all of that
Exactly.
passion about all of that. So what is an exercise physiologist? This is just me going because I don't because there's so many classifications of people who do things. I'm like,
Yep.
what is that exactly?
So in other countries, it's very similar to a physiotherapist,
Okay. I know what a
um, I
physiotherapist is.
believe, but not a physical therapist. And physiotherapists might be also really close to physical therapists. So it's a little bit hard to make sense of. Basically, you know, like there's physiology, right? Like how things work, like combining biology and chemistry, right? I look at how things work combining those two things while you're exercising. That's like the
Cool.
science of it, which
Right.
very plain sort of terms. But what do? We use, well, there's different fields we can go into. I was in clinical care, which meant I focused on the heart and the lungs and the metabolism. I taught stress management classes because if you're stressed out, your heart is not going to be functioning very well, and then you can have a heart attack or something else. So in that capacity, there's the stress testing, and I did the cardio stress testing, which is on the bicycle, and I also did pulmonary function testing, which can also be done by a respiratory therapist. I don't know. So there's a little crossover there too. And then I did cardiac and pulmonary rehab. So depending on what facility you go to, some of them are just cardiac rehabs and some of them are combined cardiopulmonary rehabs.
Right.
And it's a little bit messy because, you know, when you're talking about pulmonary rehab, there's a lot of like blowing into things and getting balls to go up and stuff. That part I don't personally do. That is a respiratory therapist. It's not that I couldn't, because you are working on the inspiratory and expiratory muscles. So like breathing in and out. So all the muscles that are in your rib cage, breathing in and like pushing it out really fast again, as well as like, I don't know, everything in your abdominal cavity is really pretty involved in that. But really I focused on the exercise portion. So I would create what we call an exercise prescription, which is very similar to what you would get from a personal trainer in a gym, except for I would have taken data from your heart rate and your VO2 max and your lactic acid threshold, which is that point where like you're walking down the street and then you start to jog and you can carry on a conversation. Then you get to a point where you can't carry on a conversation anymore. You can only talk like a couple words at a time. That's your lactic
Quit
acid
bugging
threshold.
me. I call that the bite me zone. Quit bugging me.
That's like you're like really working hard at that point. Like that is you're like you can keep going for a while, but like you're really starting to work. So I would use that data and then I would take like 60%, 80%, 70% of it, whatever, and then create like a working range for you, both on cardio and on resistance machines or free weights or whatever.
So you're like
really similar to personal, like a group personal training, but in a facility.
And it's like group personal training with cherry on top, because, you know, I mean, I've been a personal trainer for a long time. I don't have all that data. I can look at them and they can tell me how hard they're working, and I can
And
kind
that's
of
also
help.
very accurate. You know,
Right?
like especially if you use the RPE scale, like
Right.
that's really very accurate. And it basically tells you essentially like where their heart rate is. And from there, like if you've taken like befores and afters, like that's great, you know, and you don't need all that data necessarily.
But I'm trying to
It's
build you
cool
up
though.
here. I'm trying to say, like, look how
Yeah,
awesome this is.
it's awesome. It's totally awesome. And I think it's really necessary in the healthcare setting,
Right. Okay. Because they're in
But
a
like,
rehab kind of
because they're
setting.
in a rehab and because they've had a cardiac event, and that is important. But when you look at the training and the cardiac rehab together, just for like simplicity of understanding it, it's really, aside from the fact that you're dealing with 20, 30, 40 people at a time, you're just having them go from machine to machine to machine, and then you're rushing around taking their blood pressure and pulse ox as fast as you can to write it down in their chart. You know, they're physically doing very similar things. We have a gym here that actually has like a circuit that you can do.
Oh, right.
You know, so that you get on the machine and you eventually learn how to set it up yourself, and you're like, you know, moving it back and forth, the chair and the this and then that and the weights, and it kind of becomes second nature. And then my job would be to come around and be like, oh, it looks like you've been at this weight for, you know, 2 weeks. Let's put you up 5 pounds. You know what I mean? So just like a trainer would do. So in the simplicity of understanding it, like it's really similar, but we just have more data because they're a higher risk population.
So do you still work with those? Because now you're doing you've created your own empire.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. You're a celebrity with your own empire. So what do you still work with that population
So
mostly,
yes
or?
and no, I work with them in a really different way.
Okay.
I work with them in more of a client-led training kind of a way. And by that, I mean, I don't have machines. This is not my real studio behind me. I actually, like this morning, I was at 6 a.m., I was in somebody's living room. At 8 a.m., I was out on the rail trail outside using picnic benches. And we really, I walk into any given session and I say, hey, how are you feeling today? How is this that was bothering you yesterday or last week? How is it feeling today? And I basically just build on whatever I kind of have in my head as we go through it. And a lot of the people that I see now, they do have metabolic issues, a lot of them, and they usually are coming because they're in some sort of pain. And maybe they had a surgery or an injury and it's partially healed, but not all the way. Maybe they did go to physical therapy, but you only get not that many visits usually here.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
like, I don't know, 20 visits or something like that. And chances are if your left knee went and you needed physical therapy for it, and then your total exercise time is physical therapy, because that's usually what happens. Well, your right knee is probably super neglected, and also you've deteriorated it from favoring your other leg for so long. So really you needed physical therapy in both legs, but
Right.
you didn't get it. And you can't get it because insurance won't pay for it. So I see people kind of like that as well. Um,
And you're
you
not
know,
just, because we talked about this at the beginning, you're not, you have live clients, but you're not just, they don't have to be in the Hudson Valley.
yeah,
They don't have
yeah,
to be in the Hudson Valley.
that's right. That's totally right. Yeah. So, I mean, I've had clients, I've had clients in the UK. I had one in China, actually.
Whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, I had one in China. I think Canada, it doesn't really matter because you can just hop on Zoom or what have you. Usually I use Zoom and it works just fine. You
We've
know,
created an amazing world
yeah,
where we can talk to and be with people everywhere. I mean,
yeah,
on I have an accountability partner I talk to in New Zealand quite regularly.
yeah,
It's like, what's the weather like over there?
yeah. I
Because
love
it's
New
the other side of
Zealand.
the world.
Yeah,
So I was asking because um, empowered, what was it? Empowered living?
yeah, yeah. I
Empowered
have a
living.
new, yeah. So I have a new, I call it somatic business coaching. You don't have to be
Ooh,
necessarily in business, but I ended up having so many clients who were also women in business. And as we were going through our personal training sessions, all of these things were coming out. And I've studied business for so long. I've been in business for over 10 years. Most of my friends have their own businesses because that's my network, right?
right.
And I have to work on my business as well as in my business. And so all of these things kept coming up, and like they had all these doubts and frustrations. And I'd been doing so much work on myself about, doubting myself or talking negatively to myself or like being stuck in a certain place or something like that, and I made the conscious and concerted effort to like no more negative self-talk. When you start to say something or start to like, oh, that's a dumb idea, like that's not allowed. Like,
Right.
it's an idea because there's a purpose to it. Maybe do you have to fulfill the entire thing? Maybe not, but maybe it leads to something else. There's no dumb ideas, right? Unless they're really, really unsafe. Then maybe.
So I have to
Um,
tell you, when I teach yoga and I teach Tai Chi, and there's only two rules in my classes. One is you have to breathe. The second is don't cause yourself pain. Other than
yes,
that, go to town. So I like your,
agreed.
unless it's unsafe.
Yeah. I see that too, and I hated yoga for the longest time. And then I know, right? Bear with me
What?
because I know. I really, really just like, no dice. No, not at all. I was a high school athlete. I was a college athlete. I was like, what is this mess? I was like, I came here to get a really good stretch and I'm having a difficult time. Why am I still in this position? Something is burning. I'm trying to get a good stretch. I might snap in half because this is not right.
That's hilarious.
I would like push myself into the pose so far to be
Which
so
is
good
so
at it.
not yoga. I'm just gonna say it.
Well, I know. that now.
I know.
I didn't know that then. I didn't know that then. And I just was so impatient with it because I wanted my exercise to be rigorous. I wanted to be moving, you know? And then I got Lyme's disease 7 years ago.
What?
And I couldn't do anything without getting really, really sick for a long, long time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then finally, my therapist, after I don't know how long of saying, you should go to Maggie, you should go to the yoga studio, you should go to just go, just try it, just go to yoga, Cortney, just go.
Just go.
Just do it.
Here, let me drive you.
Yeah, almost. And I did finally, eventually, I did it. And it changed my life. Like totally, completely. Like my first session with Michael, he was like so nice and complimentary. And like, I was like, oh, this is great. You know, like it was a little bit of like an ego stroke, but I also like wasn't being crazy and pushing myself as much as I did when I was in college. And like, this is something, I don't know what this is, you know, it just didn't compute. And I was just like immersed in the experience. You know, it wasn't in a gymnasium in a giant university. It was in a yoga studio. It was fully spiritual and physical and mental and pranayama and meditation and explanation and like all of the things that like I needed. And I think everybody needs, but they might need different things to different degrees.
And everybody comes to it for a different reason, and they get sometimes they get, I always joke with people like, you come because you want a yoga butt, but your benefit is way more than that. Right.
So
but you have to, and it's allowing yourself that space and time to not be impatient.
Yeah.
Which I'm amazed, like, good on you to recognize your self-talk, because I had an episode a little while ago on self-talk. Like, what are you saying inside your head to yourself? Yeah, you might make a rule not to complain out loud, but if you just complain inside your head, you're doing the same thing to yourself.
Same thing. Yep.
So when you were working with these business women, they were complaining, or they were just having the same problems and you?
I think that it was mostly that they were stuck and frustrated. And, you know, so two main ones. One restaurant owner made it through COVID, but also has two young kids and a husband who travels a lot for his work. So two young kids and a restaurant. Like, I don't really know how that happens.
That's a lot to manage.
So much, because I actually met my husband waiting tables together in a restaurant. So like, it is just so much work and such a commitment to be the owner and the chef and like just all the things, right? So for her, a lot of it was the rise in food prices, and she, you know, sources locally and organically, and she has her fish brought in from Massachusetts, which is like 3-4 hours away every day that she has fish. And it's like, she buys enough and not too much. And so she runs out. It's like a come and get it kind of a thing, because she doesn't want to be holding stuff over for, you know, more than a day or two. So, you know, like things like that for her. And then another one of my clients was, you know, in the beginning for the first 6 months or however long, she, you know, was a stay-at-home mom going and getting her second master's degree, and, you know, it was master's degree stuff and it was kid stuff. And then she was like, I just bought a horse farm.
What? Just because I didn't have enough to do.
Yeah. Surprise. I was like, oh, I thought you were just boarding at the horse farm. And no, she bought it. So, okay, cool. That's awesome. So one of her main struggles was trying to find find farm hands that were going to show up, that were going to do the work, that were going to be there, because you can't not muck out the stalls. You can't not water and feed the horses. Like, you can't not show up, because they are living, breathing creatures, you know, so you have to be there. So it was like, you know, she's like, I've hired these people and I've gotten people to come to interviews, but like either they flake out after the first interview or they stop showing up randomly. And I was like, okay, well, like, what are their value systems? You know, like, you can put out on Facebook and Craigslist and LinkedIn and Indeed all you want, but how are you vetting them for their value system? Because if their value system does not align with your value system or your business's value system, or the need of the work, which is taking care of living beings, then
Right.
your employee is not going to stay. And it's hard work. It's physical labor.
Oh, yeah.
And she happens to pay very well for the position. She, was bringing in hot food for lunch every day. We made like homemade food from a local cafe, like all sorts of like really great stuff. So I knew it wasn't like her management style, or like she wasn't being mean to them or anything. It was really the value system of the person, and the person not realizing like, oh, I'm actually responsible for other living things. So I was like, okay, where do we look for these people? Like I was like, let's look for 4-H graduates. Let's look for graduates from Waldorf school and Montessori school, because, like I went to Waldorf school and we went to a farm every year and stayed there for a week and had to muck out stalls and make the food and do the crops. Like we had to do everything. We had to like be farmers for a week.
We're going to get child slave labor, but not make it seem like we have child slave labor.
But like you raise like they, I felt like
you have
I was
an appreciation.
Yeah, you have the appreciation, and you have a little, like where, and the other one was vet techs, because a lot of times vet techs want extra work, number one. And this was a slightly flexible position. And number two, you don't always get to work with big animals. It's a hard gig to get. So
I did equine massage when I went to massage school. We went out once a week to massage the horses. They're so big.
Yeah, that's awesome though. So it was looking outside the box for them in their different ways, and saying,
so
like,
you're
okay,
like business coaching them, and you're physically training them.
You're going to have a conversation anyway. Why not have it make you money?
That's so cool. Like, I don't know anybody else who's like doing, and I guess that's what you're calling it, somatic business coaching.
That's what I'm calling it. Yeah, that's what I'm calling like the practice of, you know what I mean? Because it's somatic, it's in your body, and it's business coaching. The name could be flexible going down the road. Maybe somebody wants to leave us some comments.
Yeah. We could have like a contest.
Yeah, totally. Like what we call that. You're in a personal training session, moving your body, getting the juices flowing, you're oxygenating your brain. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but a lot of times when you work, actually, do you ever see Goldie Hawn, Bette Midler, First Wives Club?
Oh no, I never saw it.
Oh, it's like older. From the 90s or something, early 2000s. Anyway, Goldie Hawn is on the elliptical and she's like going and going and going and going and going. And Bette Midler or Diane Keaton, I don't know, one of them, they look over, they're like, what are you doing? Like, she's like a crazy woman. She's sweating. She's going super fast, like faster than the machine looks like it really wants to go. And they're like, what is wrong with you? And she's like, I get all my best ideas when I'm working out. And it's true.
I get mine in the shower. I don't.
That's the second one.
Right.
Yep.
It is.
That's
true. Have a pad of paper with you when you're working out.
Yep. I mean, or
just have
waterproof crayons you can draw in your shower.
Have Cortney like taking notes for you while she says,
and I do
10 more.
and I do. So like especially when I'm one-on-one, when I do group, I encourage everybody to bring a notepad with them. Like grab your water whenever you want. And stop and jot down your notes anytime you want. Like, is it going to interrupt your workout? A little bit. Is it going to matter? Not really. You know what I mean? If you have a brilliant idea, write it down.
Yeah.
But often when I'm with somebody, I will actually like on the computer and it's one-on-one, I'll be Googling things. Sometimes I'll even poll my network and be like, hey, I need the phone number to the person who runs the local 4-H, So it's really cool. And then at the end of the session, they've gone through their brain dump and their frustrations, which would be the not complaining, but getting it out.
Right. Not
and
complaining.
Then we've gone, like during our warm up and during the exercise, that's when we're weeding through things. We're creating space. We're looking at it from different angles. We've got two brains working at the same time. And then we start to cool down. And that's when I'm like, okay, so now we're cooling down, we're winding down, we're stretching, we're doing core work, whatever, bringing our heart rate down. Like what are, the main bullet points that you want to work on when you leave this session, right? So that they have something tangible to go and do after they're done, like immediately after they're done. And if it's one-on-one, oftentimes I'll be jotting that down, or I'll tell them, I'll be like, hey, you got to do this.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously up to them whether they do or not, but I'll write it down in an email, and I'll at the end of the session, I'll just shoot it over to them, and they have something right there that they can take action on.
That is such a cool idea.
Yeah. And then
That's so
at the
awesome.
very end for the close, of course, as long as they're willing, I like to do an actual somatic meditation where any of the aha moments that they had during the session that made them feel like, if they had an epiphany or like something clicked, like, oh, this is a great idea. And you know, that like that joy that you feel, and I usually feel it in my heart center. Then we try to just really hone in on that, close our eyes, breathe into it, maybe spread it out, make it a little bit bigger or a little bit more intense, and just really feel that in our bodies, so that when we leave the session, not only do we have the bullet points to take action on, but we're also rewiring our brain and improving our energy. We're up-leveling our actual vibration so that the universe can send us all the good things that we've been wanting, right? We're setting ourselves up for success in so many ways.
That is amazing. I don't know anybody else who is doing that. Like,
Me neither.
my mind is blowing. No, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, that's so brilliant. Because there are so many people who, complaining is like problems without looking for solutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and one of the problems people have is they're not taking care of themselves physically. So you're like, we've got to work out, and we'll have a business coaching, and we'll get some business ideas, and we'll help you move through some of the things that are problems with your business that is causing you some issues, so that it's like, you're oh my God, my brain is just like,
right. And in yoga, I mean, this is what my teacher said to me many times, but she would say to our class, the issues are in the tissues.
Oh yes, baby.
Right. Yeah. So like, so you're doing yoga, and then you turn over, you look over, and you're in the studio full of people, and somebody's like sobbing over in the corner.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's because an emotional trauma has just been released from the physical tissues. And it's an incredible thing.
And because I don't know if I told you this when we talked before. So I've now been teaching yoga almost 19 years.
Oh my gosh.
So when people get all upset because they're crying, I'm like, and they don't know why, I'm like, it doesn't matter why. Just let it go.
Just
You don't
let it
have
go.
to know.
Let it
You
rip.
don't have to know why. It could have been
Yeah.
from like when you were 2. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And maybe it'll come to you. Maybe it'll come to you.
And it doesn't
that's
have to.
cool. And if it doesn't, then you still had the release. It still came out of your body. It's still going to help raise your vibration in the long run, which is going to help you do and achieve the things that you want to do and achieve, and live closer to your purpose. I was like, you were talking about like the negative self-talk, and like saying it out of your mouth versus in your head, and in your head, it's the same thing. And it's that awareness that you are talking to yourself, and that there is a voice in your head, but being aware that the voice in your head is not actually you.
Right.
It's your little s self.
Yes.
It's not your big S, like sacred self.
Have you ever read Jen Sincero?
Yes. I'm actually like 25 minutes away from finishing You're a Badass at Making Money for like the 4th or 5th time.
I know. So I like when she calls that the little prince who just stomps around and has a temper tantrum. It's like, okay, but you're still not allowed to be in charge.
Yep. Or there's another one. Did you ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic?
Big Magic. I've got it on audiobook. I listened to it like 3 times already.
Me too. So good. Just like, you're driving down the road, you're in the car, and fear can come with you. Fear is totally allowed to be there, but fear is not allowed to touch the dial, not allowed to play with the radio, and it sure as heck is not allowed to touch the steering wheel.
No, not allowed to have the map, not allowed to. You sit in the back seat with the little prince.
Yep, you can be there if you want, whatever. And Brene Brown, I think, would say that is part of your shitty first draft.
That's awesome.
Your shitty first draft. That's like the crappy story that you tell yourself, like you're in some sort of situation, and like you tell yourself whatever story you like assume that somebody else or is thinking something of you, and then this whole story blows up in your mind, and you like are panicking. So that's your little prince coming out, and
And the
she calls
stories
that your
that
shitty first draft because you make a story, right?
you totally
And
make a
then,
story, and it's so sometimes you don't even realize. So
oh
just
yeah,
really quickly, so my husband and I had to go somewhere, and I was in the car, and he said, "We just have to stop and wash the car at one of those self-wash places," and we were a bit late, running behind. So I'm sitting in the car, and he's looking at me. He's like, "She's so mad at me. She's so mad at me. I'm in so much trouble, but I just needed to wash the car, and she's so mad at me." And meanwhile, I'm sitting in the car, and I'm thinking about the movie E.T. Like like I wasn't even thinking about anything else. And he came into the car. He's like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "What? Like what?" He thought he was in trouble because
yeah.
he had told himself this story that he was in trouble.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, I'm thinking about a stupid movie with an alien who eats Reese's Pieces. Like, come
Yep.
on. So
That's the shitty first draft. That's his shitty first
that
draft.
was such a, and he had, I don't even know why he thought that because I don't ever get mad at him for much, really. So,
Oh, maybe because he was feeling bad about being late,
right. Yeah.
and then
So funny.
that's what you do to yourself too. Like you feel bad about something, so you assume that the other person also feels bad about that, but not bad about it, mad at you about it
And
because it
you
must
make
be
it
your
bigger,
fault. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so
It is.
you were,
We all
so
do it.
it is crazy. It's like if we can press pause on the tape
Mhm.
playing in the head, right? And have an editor come zooming in and rewrite
Mhm.
rewrite that story.
Exactly. For
so
sure.
so you work in groups and one-on-one?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think I'm just going to drop a little segue here into
Sure.
you have something launching. What?
Oh, yeah. So I have the Empowered Living program launching, and it's a rolling launch. So it's open for pre registration right now, and spaces are limited. I'm limiting each group to 8 people so that, it's intimate enough that each person can pipe up and talk about something if they need to. You can kind of crowdsource while you're doing your workout. You can hook up with and make accountability partners and buddies and things like that within the sessions, and it just will create a really beautiful network too. Another thing I love about the program is that you have built-in networking and peer support. So that's something that I really have been wanting to do and incorporate for a really long time, because especially women in business, we kind of think that we have to do everything ourselves. And
Especially entrepreneurs.
especially, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to make it totally, I mean, anybody could come and do it because you can just apply it to your regular life. You don't have to be a business owner or a manager or anything like that. But I do speak to them specifically because I've noticed in my travels and for myself that, especially moms who are entrepreneurs, like even just taking it a level deeper, like you don't have time to, or you say you don't have time to exercise, and you also don't really have time for a coach, because that's like, do we really need coaches? I mean, like, I
You
don't
so
know,
need coaches.
right? Yeah. As Jen Sincero would say, get a coach. Are you
Get a
sick of
coach.
hearing me say that yet?
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, how can I make this easier for them? How can I help them stay more accountable to themselves? How can I help them gain more confidence in their lives, in their bodies, in their business, in their decision making? How can I help them clear the brain fog? How can I help them manage all of the things? And another thing that I'm seeing more and more of lately are people who are getting, to about midlife and realizing that their blood work is coming back from their doctors, and it's eerily close to their parents who are suffering, heart attacks, and like they're visiting in the hospital, seeing their charts and like, oh shit, like my numbers are really close to that.
Right.
Well, if you're stressed out, you're, like working on your business, whether your business is or your baby, or you have babies and a business, you have to take the time for yourself. And so I was like, how do we turn the me time into green time? And this is how we do it. We focus on you first, and then anything else that pops up can be taken care of along the way. So making sure that you are physically, and of course, I can't not take the mental component out of it, because the brain and the body are intricately connected, and mental health and physical health are really the same thing, right?
Pretty much, yep.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because like if you want to help the physical body, you have to help the mental and vice versa. So that's like I want to make sure that women in business, or anybody really, because one-on-ones can be for anybody, that they are really mindfully taking the time to focus on themselves, and then that will manifest as huge progress in their business.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
So cool.
Thank you.
Okay, my friends, seriously. So all of the information for Cortney and all of her awesomeness is in the show notes. And I'm going to encourage everyone. Yes, everyone needs a coach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Agreed. And we should all be doing yoga.
I actually have 2 coaches. I'll put my hand up.
I have 3.
See? Yeah. And I know that you've been talking the whole time, but do you have a final word of wisdom for people?
Yes. I think one of the most important things is you can start now from any place that you are. From wherever you are right now, that is absolutely the perfect place to start on whatever it is. It doesn't have to be this, but on anything that your heart is calling to, or anything that your body is telling you it needs, or your mind. You're perfect just as you are. And we can always build on that to make you feel more in control, more confident, and more settled and closer to your higher or bigger S self.
The big S self.
The big S self.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for blowing my mind, because I love when my mind is blown. I feel like I've expanded today.
Oh, thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you. And my friend listening, watching, I hope you have an amazing day and continue your upward spiral, my friends. Take care. I will see you soon. Hi, my friend. Thanks so much for listening to this entire podcast. If you found it useful and you're like me and you like helping others, please feel free to share this. Just give it a like, give it a comment. If you found something useful in it, there's a chance that someone else will find something useful as well. Also, if you have any questions at all, I can absolutely help, and I would love to help. You can email me at heather@prosperityflowcoaching.com. If you want more of this awesome content, you can follow me on Instagram, Heather Stewart Coaching. You can follow me on Facebook, Prosperity Flow Coaching. And I have a personal request. I want to help as many people as I can with these podcasts. And if you could give me a review, hopefully a good one, if you could share, if you could send this out into the world, I would truly appreciate it. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope that you find your way to wellness by getting back to me. Take care, my friend.